Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry, episode 5, where we are now in the big showdown of this episode. We have skipped all the other Twilights, we have gone from whatever Hideyoshi's death was to now this setting where Erika, and therefore Bernkastel, are going to argue of who the culprit is. If they can prove that this was done by a human, then Beatrice and really witches in general have been defeated. However, Beatrice is going to be continuing to fight that she's the one that's still doing this, even so she's not. I don't know how this is all going, but yeah, we got a little bit of a showdown on our hands here.
それでは私から始めたいと思います。秀吉さん殺しについてはとてもシンプル。夏日さん以外の方を疑うことは不可能なはずです。私たちは被害者と夏日さんを除いて全員が同じ部屋にいたじゃないですか。
It really was simple. Except for Natsuhi, everyone had been inside the parlor. And because it was so simple, it was decisive.
どう考えても秀吉を殺したのは夏日じゃないの。いいえ、逆だわ。どう考えても夏日以外に秀吉は殺せないじゃないの。議論も反論の余地もないわ。
See, here's the thing. And I've brought this up before. I don't think it was Natsuhi. I don't think it's as plain as simple, because it really was drawn for us to predict or assume that it was Natsuhi who was the only one who could have committed the crime and was in the only room as Hideyoshi. It made a lot of sense as to her being the only one that could have been the person to do so, even until we never saw anything along those lines. I think we're being purposely thrown off, but in what way, I'm not really sure. So I hold on to the prediction that no, Natsuhi didn't necessarily do it here.
ですから誤解です。確かに私にはアリバイがないかもしれません。しかしアリバイがないことはすなわち犯人であるとの証拠にはならないはず。
夏日にだけアリバイがないのは分かった。だが待て、殺害現場は密室であったぞ。夏日に限らず誰であってもあの部屋での犯行は不可能だったはずだ。魔法で殺人が遂行できるわらわを除いてな。
密室トリックであるハウダニットについては後で説明します。とりあえず今はフーダニットから。よって以上により秀吉さん殺しは夏日さん以外の人物を疑うのは不可能となるわけです。
Now, I do want to continue the possibility of maybe something along the lines of maybe not necessarily a poison being used, because it couldn't have been. I think it was pretty well established that this was a murder of some sort, but could it have been maybe a hallucinogenic or something? You know, something that he thought he saw and reacted to, but it wasn't really that? It's hard to say. I mean, Natsuhi didn't see another person in the room.
お嬢様、ここをさらに切り込むと危険かと。
同感だわ。夏日が秀吉の部屋のクローゼットに隠れていたのは事実。復唱要求で所在の確認を行われると追い詰められるわ。であろうな。ゲームの支配者はラムダデルタ教だ。あやつが面白がれば事実に関係なく夏日が犯人ということで確定されてしまうぞ。
If the typhoon passes and the police come to perform a scientific investigation, perhaps the true culprit will be identified and the false accusations against Natsuhi will be lifted. However, in this closed-off Rokkenjima, the police will not arrive for all eternity. In other words, the real truth will not be revealed. Inside this cat box that will never be opened, false charges that everyone accepts are worth no more or less than the truth.
おそらく向こうの狙いはシンプルな秀吉殺しで夏日様が犯人であるとの印象を確定させ、その上で不確定要素の多い第一の番の再構築に入るつもりでしょう。
ゲームマスターに疑われた状態での進行は最悪よ。主導権を握るべきだわ。ラムダデルタ教、ご存知の通り第5のゲームでも多くの殺人が起き、 深夜から早朝までの短からぬ時間をまたいでおる。いきなり秀吉の殺人から始まり、時間が行ったり来たりしてしまうようでは混乱してしまうというもの。ここは時系列に従い順番に進めていくのが良いかと思うが、いかがか。
異議提出。犯人を告発する過程において時系列など意味をなさない。
異議提出。フルドエリカは時系列を混乱させることによって印象操作を行っている。
ああ、よくわかんないのは私もごめんだわ。ベアとの主張を認めるわよ。エリカはいきなり第2の番から始めないで。
Honestly, I'm in favor of this. I think this is the way it should go because of how this is. I mean, in a regular case, and I've been on a jury of like of a criminal case before, you are quite literally jumping around. You have to. That's just how it is. But with something like this, where it's literally trying to figure out whether this was a human-made, murder or a witch-made murder, it's a little different, you know? I do think it's very important to tackle everything in a chronological order because my ass will get confused as well. I definitely saw Erica click her tongue. I understand. So this is a way of telling Rokkenjima's tale. I was guided by Virgilia, met Beatrice, reached the peak from which you can see everything below you and finally understood the truth of this world.
これが以前にワルギリアが話してくれたことなんだな。
ええ、そうですよ。ここでは真実など脆い。
両者が主張する限り、異なる真実が同時に存在できる。
Yes, this really is a trial. Both sides put forth their own truths. This here truly is the Braun Tube trial that Virgilia once used as an analogy.
ではラムダデルタ教のご命令に従い、最初の第1の番の事件から話を始めます。ご存知の通り、10月4日初日の24時、親族会議の小休止の後、夏日さんは先に休むと一人退席しました。よってその時刻から翌朝まで完全にアリバイは消失します。
The culprit is Ushiromiya Natsuhi. This is because Natsuhi is the only one without an alibi.
はて、そうかな。夏日以外にもアリバイの怪しい人物などいくらでもいるはず。それら全員の疑いを晴らさぬ限り、夏日を犯人呼ばわりさせるわけにはいかぬぞ。
I mean, we were talking about the letter and the knock a couple of videos ago, and honestly, it's a really interesting thing to consider. I don't know if it'd help us too much now, but it's worth considering that we know who was in the building, we know who was outside the building. And could something have been done through a process of both parties? Somehow, maybe? I don't know. But if we can figure that out, I think it could help here. And it does not necessarily clear Natsuhi. It doesn't necessarily paint her as the only target here as well. We don't know what happened to Kraus for a little bit. We don't know what happened to Genji for a little bit. We don't know what happened to Natsuhi for a bit. Even so, we saw a scene of Genji telling her, hey, you've got a phone call. The culprit cannot be definitively said to be Natsuhi as long as there are other people without alibis. And yeah, we don't know about everybody over in the guest house. Okay, I can't read all of this if this is gonna skip. Like, it's gonna go by way too quick, right? Maybe? I don't know. It's not possible that Battler in the guest house committed the crime, or Nanjo, Goda, Kumasawa, Genji in the mansion, Kraus. It is not possible that other people in the mansion besides Natsuhi committed the crime. Is it not possible that George and the others were actually just playing dead? What if the second floor was reachable without going past Erica in the lounge? What if the crime was committed before midnight? Committed before 3 a.m.? What if the crime was committed outside the interval of midnight and 1 a.m.? What if someone in the mansion committed the crime between midnight and 3 a.m.? Because we only have the midnight time for determining who was in the building and who was outside. It's only that very specific time. So Natsuhi was the only one without an alibi between midnight and 1 a.m. This is being used as a basis for claiming that she is the culprit. However, that cannot be said for certain as long as the following possibilities exist, which I just went through because I thought this was going to skip on me at some point, but nope.
確かに
Okay, now I know for next time that those screens should be okay.
夏日が怪しいとそこまで言い張るならエリカは夏日以外全員のアリバイを示してみせるべきだわねえベル
ええ、無論よ。エリカはそれを完全に説明しきるわ。
The culprit is Ushiromiya Natsuhi, as we will prove everyone else has an alibi.
当然です、我が主。では、順にご説明していきたいと思います。源氏殺しは一度忘れ、ゲストハウスの事件のみに絞って進めます。となれば、ゲストハウスにいた使用人を疑いたいですよね。あの晩は、郷田さんと熊沢さんがゲストハウスにおられました。
And Goda was awake.
そうですね、お二方。
When she turned to face the direction where those two were seated, those two wax models alone came back to life. They probably weren't granted souls until they were allowed to speak. In that case, it would have been better if Natsuhi's soul would have or could have disappeared as well. Natsuhi, who was in the defendant's chair, kept her soul the whole time, and was constantly hanging her head looking nervous. Goda hurried to his feet and answered Erica's question.
はい、そうです。私はあの晩、一人でゲストハウスの使用人室におりました。
私はこの老体ですからね。夜は答えますから、ゲストハウスの控え室に戻って、お先にすぐ休ませてもらいましたとも。
では郷田と熊沢もアリバイを失うではありませんか。一人で控室で休んでいたと自称する熊沢、一人で使用人室にいたと自称する郷田、そのどちらにもいとこ部屋へ行き殺人を行う余地があるはずです。
めっそうもない。どうしてそんなことを私たちが。
Why would Natsuhi do anything like that too? That's not the point. We're talking about alibis.
そうですともそうですとも。人殺しなんてそんなとんでもないことです。
I will say, oh, hold on. The culprit cannot be definitively said to be Natsuhi. After all, it's not possible that Kumasawa or Goda in the guest house committed the crime. Okay, that screen went away too quick.
夏日がすべて語っておるわ。控え室で一人眠った熊沢も、使用人室に一人こもった郷田も、寝室の夏日と何も変わらぬ。どちらもアリバイを失うではないか。
ご安心を。この二人は殺人犯ではないと私が保証します。まず熊沢さんは晩餐後、私たちと一緒に屋敷を出てゲストハウスへ行き、そのまま控え室に入り朝まで眠っていました。郷田さんも同じです。事務作業を終え、その後に私たちとラウンジで談笑して、それを終えてから休みました。両名とも殺人を行う余地はありません。
いよいよ来たな。
What does that mean?
それではわらわも腰を上げるとしよう。もはやそなたの出番は終わりだ、エリカ。そなたの頼れる用心棒を呼び出すがいい。
Beato glanced at where Delanor sat on the second floor audience seating. However, Delanor just stared back with those usual expressionless eyes.
副将要求、郷田と熊沢のアリバイについて完全な証拠がある。
副将拒否。なんで敵にヒントを？答えるわけもない。
お聞きから無駄デルタ卿、証拠はないそうだぞ。証拠もなく郷田と熊沢のアリバイを主張しても良いものなのか。
道理だわ。どうなのよベルン、エリカ。どうして郷田と熊沢のアリバイを主張できるわけ？
引っ込めエリカ。わらわの相手はそこのドラノールよ。貴様ごとき人間に魔女の相手は務まらぬわ。
いいえ、ドラノールの出番は必要ありません。あなたの言う人間ごときが魔女を打ち破るからこそ魔女幻想が否定されるのです。ならばどうぞ、赤で青でお好きなように受けて立ちますよ。
You gotta respect her preparedness here. In response to Erika's challenge, Beato smiled boldly yet gracefully and slowly stood up. And they glared at each other between the floor and the balcony.
ゴーダにも熊沢にもそれぞれアリバイがない。二人はゲストハウスにおり、いつでもいとこ部屋へいたり、犯行を行うことができた。それが否定できぬ限り、夏日を犯人呼ばわりすることなどできぬぞ。
Beato's blue truth stuck out rapidly. The curtain had finally dropped and the battle had begun. The battle of wits.
使える赤はない。ドラノールを呼ばずにどう切り返してみせると？
エリカに使えずとも、その主のベルンカステル卿は使えます。油断はできませんぞ。
青き真実有効だわ。どうするのベルン？あんたかドラノールが相手を変わる？
まだ私の出番ではありません。そしてベルンカステル卿の出番でもありません。
ええ、そうよ。この程度じゃ私たちの出番にはならないわ。フルドエリカというただの人間風情がベアトを打ち破ってこそ意味があるのよ。人間に打ち破られてこそわかるわ。黄金のベアトリーチェなどとのたまう偽りの魔女が人間以下の幻に過ぎなかったとね。
それが本当にできるなら最高に面白いんだけどね。いいわエリカ、受けて立ちなさい。
まず熊沢さんですが、とてもシンプルな話です。熊沢さん、ご起立を。
はい。
熊沢さんは昨夜就寝されてから朝事件を知らされるまで一度でも控室を出ましたか？
いいえ、朝までぐっすりでしたとも。
私、昨夜の晩餐の後にエドさんと談笑していて面白い話を聞かせてもらっていたんです。
Oh?
それを試させてもらいました。
それとは何か？まさか。
そうです。金蔵を書斎に追い詰め封じたもの。扉に物を挟むことで封印できることを私は知ったのです。
Oh, gotcha.
なんだと？あいつまさかそれを熊沢さんの控室に？
エリカはゲストハウスにいたのですから、それができたとしても何も問題はありません。
何しろ莫大な黄金が発見されてどんな事件が起こってもおかしくない不気味な夜でした。探偵あるところ事件あり。私は何かの事件が起こることを予見してあらかじめアリバイを失いそうな人物にこれで封印をさせていただいたのです。
Okay, that's actually kind of clever. Erika held a small folded piece of brown paper high in the air.
私はこれを一緒にゲストハウスに戻った熊沢さんが休むと言って控室に入ったのを見届け、これを使って扉を封印したのです。そして朝、事件が発覚し大騒ぎになった時、私は真っ先に熊沢さんの控室を確認し、そして封印が健在であることを確認しました。以上により私は熊沢さんのアリバイを証明できます。
Kumasawa has an alibi. After all, I don't think we could really, see her climbing out of a window. Okay, now we're back to this. Oh yeah, okay, it's getting rid of one of these. Okay, well, there we go. I guess slowly but surely we have to go through all of these.
グッド、素晴らしいアリバイだわ。一部の隙もない。熊沢はエリカと共にゲストハウスに戻り、そのまま控室に入って休み、朝まで部屋を出ることはなかった。つまり熊沢はゲストハウスへ戻って以降、朝まで2階に上がっていない。
The proof Erika had shown was elevated by Bernkastel and became a red truth. This truth, which had become red, could no longer be overturned even by Beato. In other words, in that instant, Kumasawa's perfect alibi had been absolutely guaranteed.
ほほう、ならばゴーダについてはどうか。
ゴーダさんも ゲストハウス到着後はすぐに使用人室にこもられました。そして同様にこれで封印させていただきました。
Yeah, I figured that the same trick would be used on him.
そしてローザさんが午前1時にお戻りになった時はたまたま廊下に出た私が気づき、使用人室の合田さんにそれを伝えたのです。その時封印は健在でしたので、ゲストハウスに到着してから午前1時まで合田さんは使用人室を出ていません。そしてその後はラウンジで午前3時まで私と一緒にいました。そして午前3時以降は私は2階にいましたので。
Sorry if you guys can hear my dogs, by the way. I have some noise canceling on this new microphone setup, but it's not going to be perfect, so their barks will still kind of come through, but just let it be, you know, background material or something if you hear it. I don't know.
合田さんが2階に上がってこないことを保証できます。
エリカの封印が合田が午前1時まで使用人室にこもっていたことを証明するわ。そして午前3時までのアリバイを一緒にラウンジで過ごしたエリカが証明するわ。そしてそれ以降の朝までに2階へ一切立ち入ってないこともエリカが証明するわ。
Unless he somehow exited through the window but somehow got to the second floor. But I don't know how feasible that is. We don't have enough information for that.
つまり合田はゲストハウスへ戻って以降朝まで2階に上がっていない。
But could he have actually gone outside? He could have gone outside and maybe back to the mansion, not inside the mansion. Or maybe he did. I don't know. There is that weird gap. We only know of the time of midnight of where everybody was. Or those that were inside the mansion, those that were out. Goda has an alibi, though I'm a little suspicious of this one. We have good, you know, justification, but I don't know. I think it's possible that he had like a hand, maybe, but I don't think he committed a crime.
赤き真実有効だわ。お見事よエリカ。あんたのその扉の封印によるアリバイがベルンに認められて赤き真実に昇華されたわ。
ありがとうございます、我が主。我こそは探偵。人間でありながら赤き真実を行使することのできる人間を超えし者。
人間を超えただ。この思い上がりめ、口走るには1000年早いわ。
Oh, that's 2 down.
おかしな追求があると面倒なので先にはっきりさせます。というかむしろこれは最初にするべきでした。前後したことをお詫びします。24時の時点でのゲストハウスの状況です。黄金が発見され緊急の親族会議になり、バトラさんと親族たちは屋敷へ。ゲストハウスには私といとこ3人、南條先生、合田さん、熊沢さんが残りました。合田さん、熊沢さんのアリバイについてはすでにご説明の通り、ジョージさん、ジェシカさん、マリアさんの3人はいとこ部屋でトランプで遊んでいました。実は私ほんの少しだけ混ぜていただきましたので、この時我が主以上の復唱を要求します。
ええ、応じるわ。ゲストハウスには24時の時点でジョージ、ジェシカ、マリアは生存していて2階のいとこ部屋にいた。南條、合田、熊沢は1階にいた。あともうもったいべることないから。
Actually, hold on. Nanjo, Goda, and Kumasawa were on the first floor, so that confirms that they were all inside the guest house at that time.
これまでに出ている犠牲者の死亡も確定させとくわね。ジョージ、ジェシカ、マリア、ローザ、現時の5人はちゃんと死んでるわね。
Okay, so no faking it.
あのばっくりいった首で死んだふりなんて
I mean, I
で
didn't
きる
think
わけないで
otherwise.
しょ。
No murder occurred before midnight. I mean, yeah, I could have understood there being... Hold on. We guarantee that George's group is dead. I could understand there being suspicions as to, when they died. Alright, what are we blocking out here? Is it not possible that George and the others were actually just playing dead? Nope, that's gone. What if the crime was committed before midnight? That is gone. But there's that. Now there's the after 3 a.m. That's actually a pretty interesting one. So I want to hold out some suspicion specifically for Goda. I don't, suspect him too much. I don't predict that he actually committed any crime here. But I do think it's a little odd for him. However, 1 a.m. is that special moment where, okay, Rosa came back and Goda was in the servant room, responded to Erica, and then came out. So it's hard to say what window of opportunity there could have been for him to leave. But where would he have gone, And the reason why I'm a little suspicious of him as well, maybe not so much Kumasawa. This was mentioned in a comment, but I noticed it as well. When everybody was doing their introductions, Goda and Kumasawa said something different than the others. They never stated whether they were alive or dead. They were just greeting everybody, which I could see that as that's just the way they are, or there could be some significance to it, but I'm kind of more on the former, and that's why I never brought it up. But I do wonder. I don't know what that could have meant either, by the way, so, I'm not really worrying about it too much. Unsurprisingly, Beato's side couldn't get away with the simple plan of claiming that the victims were only playing dead. But in order to overcome Goda and Kumasawa's alibis, it should have been possible to suppose that the crime occurred before those doors were sealed. However, the opponent had predicted this move perfectly. It had been shown in red that the crime did not occur before the time period covered by Erica's alibis.
そうそう、犠牲者の確認されてる最後の生存時刻。それを最初に言ってほしかったわね。これで24時以前の話は無視していいことになるわ。
さらに言うと、24時の時点で屋敷の2階廊下には夏日とクラウス、源氏がいたわ。
Okay, so those three were absolutely up there.
残りは全員親族会議の食堂よ。もちろんこの時点ではまだ殺人は起こってない。源氏も健在よ。
Confirmation that at midnight those said to be inside the mansion were indeed inside the mansion. It has already been shown that none of them left the mansion before 1 a.m., excluding Natsuhi.
それはエリカが観測したことじゃないけれど、それが確定してないとゲームが進まないものね。いいわ。その赤き真実を認めるわ。赤き真実、ありがとうございます。
Since Erica had been in the guest house, it was only natural that she could explain the situation there. However, since she hadn't been in the mansion at the time, explaining the situation over there would have been extremely difficult for her. Beato would normally have attacked there with the blue truth, saying that the people in the dining hall had all agreed to keep to the same story. That someone had snuck out of the dining hall, that they might have committed murder in the guest house. However, because Byrne had instantly settled that matter with the red text, Beato had completely lost her chance to strike back.
厄介ですな。これほどまでに不利とは。
これじゃまるでかつてのリーチェとバトラの戦いが逆になったみたいね。
いや、その時よりもさらに状況は悪いかと。
No, I believe it. At a glance, the fight between the two of them resembled our previous fights. However, there were some vital differences. The first was whether or not Beato was the game master. The Beato who fought against me was the game master. So she knew all the truth. That's why she was able to use the red text at will. However, the current Beato isn't the game master. She's just a single piece on the game board. In other words, even Beato doesn't know the truth. So you could say that Beato is now in the same position I once was. Also, though Erica may seem to be in the same position I once was, well, the situation for her is totally different. She's connected to the witch called Burnka still. Even though she isn't the game master, she's capable of elevating Erika's statements to become Red Truth. Because of this, Erika can use the Red Truth even though she's neither a witch nor the game master. Beato, who's supposed to be the witch, possesses no truth nor red she can use. And yet the detective Erika can use the Red Truth. The advantage is completely flipped over to the other side. Perhaps you could say that the current Beato is in a much worse position than I was when I fought with her. After I got used to the game, Beato stopped responding to my demands that she use the Red Truth. But in the beginning, she had responded to almost all of them, giving me quite a few hints. That's why we were able to fight on par. Good times, honestly. I do miss the episode 2 fights. However, Burnka still is different. She fully understands the rules of this game and is prepared to corner Beato without even a hint of restraint. And because of this, I knew. In the past, Beato went easy on me so that we could fight on par with each other.
これはなかなかに面白い戦いだ。なるほど。わらわはかつてのバトラの立場で戦っているというわけか。
ベアト。
かつてのそなたを無能と蔑んだわらわだ。この程度、まだまだ答えぬぞ。ゴーダと熊沢を疑うことはもう不可能だわ。これ以上論点にしても勝てない。だな。別のアプローチに切り替えよう。
順当に行くなら次は南條でしょう。彼もまたゲストハウスにいた人物です。
南條は確かラウンジでエリカと一緒だったわ。しかしその前後の時間帯が空白になるはず。そうだな、そこをつく。南條、そなたは確かエリカとゴーダと一緒にゲストハウス1階のラウンジでくつろいでいたのだったな。
It is, or is it not possible that Nanjo in the guest house committed the crime?
はい、私はエリカさんとずっとご一緒でした。
ラウンジで過ごした時間は
午前1時から午前3時までです。
ええ、そうです。午前1時から午前3時までの間。
Okay, but what about prior to 1 a.m.?
私と南條先生、ゴーダさんの3人はラウンジでくつろいでいました。我が主、復唱要求です。
応じるわ。午前1時から午前3時までエリカ、南條、ゴーダの3人はゲストハウス1階のラウンジで過ごした。
Though she had flat out refused to repeat what Beato told her to, she responded to Erika's demand immediately. The Red Truth was starting to corner Beato. She grimaced as though in pain, but she still struck back with the Blue Truth. No, perhaps she really was in pain. Now that the characters apart from Natsuhi have had their alibis established, the illusion of the witch is also being denied. Beato perceived the denial of her existence as pain.
ならば、ラウンジで過ごした時間帯の前後はアリバイがないはず。南條にも犯行は可能であるぞ。
そうね、南條がラウンジでエリカと一緒に1時から3時までいたことは分かったけど、どうエリカ？
はい、まず午前1時以前のアリバイ、これは全く問題ありません。私が24時までいとこ部屋でトランプで一緒に遊んでおり、それからラウンジに降りてそこで南條先生とお会いしたからです。
そうでしたな。24時に降りてきたエリカさんとお会いして少しお話をしていましたら、かなりすっかり意気投合してしまい、
私、碑文の謎解きで書庫に入った時、海外の名作ミステリーの原書が多数保管されているのを見ていました。ですので、それらを手に取りながらぜひ議論がしたくなりまして、私たちは書庫に移り、ずっとおしゃべりをしていました。ラウンジに場所を移すまでずっとです。
Cramped though it was, the book storage room in the guest house was stocked well enough that it was fair to call it a small library. In it were several famous foreign mystery novels that Kinzo had once taken a liking to, Of course, they were all originals and in English, but English was no problem for Erika, or for either Erika or Nanjo. For this occasion, they had borrowed the key to the library one more time from Goda in the servant room. At that point, Eric had checked the seal again and, of course, reset it. Damn her. Even though she keeps it sealed for anyone else to enter or leave, she alone enters and leaves whenever she wants.
なるほど。つまり24時から就寝する午前3時までの間、ずっと南條と一緒だったわけね。なら南條のアリバイは一番盤石ということになるわ。
はい、そういうことになります。我が主、復唱要求です。
応じるわ。24時以降、エリカは午前3時までずっと南條と一緒にいたわ。
At midnight, the crime in the cousin room still hadn't occurred. So this way, an alibi had been established for the period before the time they were in the lounge.
その後、私たちは午前1時に書庫から廊下へ出ます。すると偶然、お戻りになられたローザさんと鉢合わせになりました。そして私がゴーダさんにそれを教えました。客人を出迎えるのは使用人の役目だろうと思いまして。
Goda asked if he should bring a towel, but Rosa refused. She quickly headed up to the second floor. At this point, Erika, Goda, and Nanjo gathered together, decided to have a drink. Their alibis in the lounge up until 3 a.m. have already been proclaimed and read, so there are no problems there.
続きまして、午前3時以降、お開きになった後の南條先生のアリバイです。午前3時にバトラさんがお戻りになり、ラウンジは解散。私と南條先生、バトラさんの3人は2階へ上がりました。そして南條先生はお休みに。その際、もちろん先生のお部屋の扉にも封印をさせていただきました。あとは事件発覚まで同じです。私はバトラさんの悲鳴と同時に部屋を飛び出し、南條先生の部屋の扉に封印がされていることを確認しました。よって南條先生のアリバイは午前1時以前、午前3時以降、ともに完璧なのです。
Again, unless he did something like Goda, where he would just slip out the window, but I think for him, I would have to say it's similar to Kumasawa. I kind of doubt that happening. Nanjo has an alibi. Well, that marks off another one, I believe. Yep, there it is. We're running out of these, huh? Would Battler be next on the list at some point?
Erika, あなたの封印も赤き真実も完璧よ。南條は午前3時までエリカと一緒にいたというアリバイがある。そして午前3時から朝まで自室を出ていない。
I do think we need to continue to have our eyes peeled here and our ears totally open, because there's a possibility that there's a hole with all of these. Erika made use of the seals on the doors and was granted red truths from Brinkastil one after another. For me, demanding that Beato repeat something had been about maneuvering and tactics, but it's totally different for Erika. For her, it's like having a trump card that can make red whenever she wants.
これでゲストハウスの容疑者全員のアリバイ証明を終えました。問題はありませんね。
問題はあるぞ。それはだな。その
Beato racked her brains to find some point to latch onto, but Erika's red had been ruthlessly perfect. There was no point that she could take issue with. Beato kept thinking hard, trying to fault Erika on something, but her expression was so wrought with desperation that anyone could tell by looking.
ベアトを却下するわ。私は何も問題を感じない。極めてポップでキュートでパーフェクトだわ。
What?
これでゲストハウスの人間全員のアリバイは証明された。
待ちな、エリカ。俺を抜く気か。後ろ宮バトラにだって犯行のチャンスはあるはずだ。何しろ犠牲者たちと同じ部屋で一夜を共にしたんだぞ。 その俺を差し置いて議論を先になんか進ませねえ。
The problem is that it's already been declared in red that he cannot be the culprit ever. At that time, an arrow twisted like a golden snake and hit me. It didn't pierce through me, but it slapped me hard on the cheek like a whip.
バトラ様の発言権はまだ認められておりません。ご注意を。
はあ、分かっておるぞバトラ。そしてすまぬ。許せ。エリカ、まだバトラのアリバイを示していないぞ。バトラは犠牲者たちと枕を並べて眠った男。誰よりも一番に疑わなければならぬのではないのか。
Is it not possible that Battler in the guest house committed the crime? Well, according to some red text, or a red truth on the other side of things here,
ベアトの言う通りだわ。
unfortunately, he can never be the culprit.
ダメじゃないよね、バトラを飛ばしちゃ。これ
Or
は失礼しま
fortunately,
し
I don't know
た。
how you want to look at it.
すっかり失念しておりました。
そなたは午前3時に帰ってきたバトラと共に2階へ上がる。そしてそなたも自室に戻って眠ったはずだ。24時にいとこ部屋を訪れたかもしれぬが、午前3時以降には訪れておらぬはず。まさかその後バトラのベッドに潜り込みに行ったとでも言うのか。一晩中バトラの寝顔を見ていとこ部屋でのアリバイを確認していたとまで言うなら認めてやってもいいがな。
ええ、一晩中寝息を聞いていましたが。
Nah, no way. There's no way.
なんだと。
There's no way.
私、フルドエリカはバトラさんが午前3時にいとこ部屋にお戻りになり、すぐにそのままベッドに潜り込み、すぐに就寝してしまったことを証明できます。そして起床され、部屋の惨状に気づき悲鳴を上げるまで、部屋で何も起こらなかったことまでも証明できます。ですのでご安心を。バトラさんは犯人ではありません。殺人現場にそうとは知らずに入り、朝まで寝てしまったただの愉快な第一発見者です。
バカな。お得意の封印でもそれを証明することは不可能なはず。どうしてそれがそなたに証明できるというのか。
ふざけるな。あの時俺は自分だけ部屋に入ったんです。エリカだって自分の部屋へ戻ったはずだ。どうしてそんなさも見ていたかのように断言できるんだ。
見たとは言っていません。エリカさんに割り当てられた部屋はどこですか。
エリカ、教えてちょうだい。どうしてあなたはバトラのことがそこまで証明できるの？
Yeah, I'm curious too. Is Erica a freak?
さすがよ。それでこそ探偵だわ。
私の部屋はいとこ部屋の隣です。薄い壁が1枚あるだけです。
まさかそなたは壁に耳をつけいとこ部屋の様子を伺っていたというのか。
はい、私の耳は完璧です。バトラさんが入室後、直ちに私は部屋の壁に耳をつけ、何か異常が起こらないか監視していました。
あんた、バトラが悲鳴を上げる朝まで何も起こらなかったと証明できると言ったわね。まさかあんた。
はい、朝まで一睡もせずに壁に耳をつけ監視をしておりました。
What the fuck? And she didn't hear anything out of the ordinary. Everyone was stunned into silence. She put her ear against the wall, and for the entire time until morning, she listened to what was going on in Battler's room. Just what would that have looked like? Until dawn, she had killed her breathing in a pitch-black room, clinging to the wall shared with the cousin room, like some kind of creepy venomous spider clinging to the wall of a darkened room. Berka still alone was grinning in triumph.
ゲームの進行上から当主の指輪を受け継いだバトラがキーマンになるのは読めていた。私はてっきりバトラが第一の番の犠牲者だと思ってたわよ。
はい、ですから 我が主の追いつけ通り朝まで一睡もせずに壁に耳をつけ異常が起こらないか監視をしておりました。
エリカの記憶力は写真並み、そして聴力は録音機並み。エリカの耳をごまかしてジョージたちを殺し首に傷を刻むなど不可能なことよ。
Does that mean that since she had her ear to the wall, that they would have already been killed by the time that Battler got into the room? So there was that gap. There's now a gap in time. I'm sure we could have figured that, at any point, that Battler went to sleep unknowing that they were already, he was sleeping with corpses basically, and not George and Jessica who were, just asleep. No, they were dead. So that for sure confirms that, I think. But it really does raise some eyebrows in some ways here. It is impossible for Battler to have committed the crime. But it was also impossible because it had already been stated and read earlier. But I guess now we have like a in-story reasoning for it. And that is Erica just being a freak. Which I guess we could have guessed that anyways. She seems to have that going on for her.
探偵権限で認められた能力ね。認めざるを得ない。赤で認定するわ。後宮バトラーは午前3時にいとこ部屋に戻り、そのまま就寝した。そして事件発覚まで部屋では一切不審なことはなかった。
つまりバトラには殺人も死体を傷つけることも不可能だったということ。
The red from the pear forced Beato to show an expression of considerable anguish. It was only natural. Those red truths not only guaranteed Battler's alibi, but a number of other things as well. First off, it meant the murder was impossible for anyone after 3 a.m. And since the cousins were confirmed to be alive as late as midnight, the time period of the crime automatically became between midnight and 3 a.m. That meant the alibis for all people who weren't in the guest house before 3 a.m. had also been guaranteed automatically. See, that's what I noted as well. It's impossible for the crime to have occurred after 3. It does make things pretty interesting here, doesn't it? Yep, there we go. So there's only 6 other points here. Genji, Kraus, other people in the mansion besides Natsuhi. Second floor, reachable. That's actually a good one right there.
エリカは24時以降はずっとゲストハウスにいます。つまり屋敷にいた人物のアリバイを証明することが難しいはずだった。
エヴァたちの動向についてのアリバイ証明は困難を極めたはず。それが逆に簡単に彼らが24時から午前3時までの間ゲストハウスに訪れなかったことを証明するだけでアリバイが可能になってしまった。
とにかく午前3時以前で殺人が可能だと構築、そしてそれを屋敷の誰かで実行可能だと証明しなくてはならぬ。
The people who had been in the guest house all had alibis. The crime didn't occur before midnight. The crime couldn't have occurred after 3 a.m. In other words, there was no way for the murders to happen unless someone from the mansion committed the crime between midnight and 3 a.m. What if someone in the mansion committed the crime between midnight and 3 a.m.? Here we go. In order to protect Natsuhi, she had to establish that it was possible for someone other than Natsuhi to commit the crime. Ironically, the witch had to prove that a human had committed the crime. I know, we've been kind of going through that. Even so, it's supposed to be the opposite. But her goal is to protect Natsuhi and claim that she killed Hideyoshi instead of Natsuhi.
しかし、そいつはなかなか難しい話だな。エリカは午前3時までラウンジにいた。そして2階へはそこを通らずには至れない。つまり事実上ゲストハウス2階の管理人のような状態になってるわけだ。
Unless you somehow got up to the second floor, which is why I still think that there are some that, may be questionable.
月並みですが、
エリカに知られずに2階へ上がることができれば犯行は誰にでも可能だと証明できるでしょう。
人間その気になりゃ2階の窓までよじ登ることもできるかもしれねえぞ。
What if the second floor was reachable without going past Erica in the lounge? See, I brought this up already, but I'm sure it's going to get dashed. Of course, Beato had also thought of striking back that way, and Burncastill must have thought this as well.
バトラ、南條、郷田、熊沢、ゲストハウスのすべての人物に犯行が不可能であることは分かった。しかし、屋敷の人間はどうか。
すでにお話ししておりますし、我が主が赤き真実でも宣言済みです。私はゲストハウス1階のラウンジにいました。そして2階へ至るにはラウンジを通らなければなりません。つまり私の目に触れずに2階へ至ることは不可能だということです。
それが不可能ではなかったら、例えばゲストハウスの外壁にはしごを立てかけ2階の窓より侵入したとか。
I wasn't even considering a ladder.
ラウンジを通らずに
But I guess that
2階へ
makes
至る
sense.
方法は存在するはず。これならばそなたの目に触れずに犯行現場へ至ることは可能だ。
Beato finally struck back. Before now, she had let Erica take total control and attack her with the red over and over. And during that time, Beato's counterattacks with the blue truth had been few in number, even including this one.
当然そう切り返されることは想定済みです。私のラウンジでの見張りが無意味であったことにされてはたまりませんから。そこでまずは私の見張りが完璧であったことを証明しなくてはなりません。まずゲストハウスの構造上、ラウンジにいた私の目に触れることなく2階へ至ることは不可能です。視覚も遮蔽物も一切なく、どのような物理的心理的視覚も存在しません。我が主、復唱要求します。
ゲストハウス2階へはラウンジにいた人物に知られずに至ることは不可能。もちろんこれは内部から2階へ至る話だけれど。
Okay.
グッドです、我が主。さて次はベアトリーチェ卿のご公設の外部から至る方法です。これには正直困りました。登れそうな木もありますし、はしごを使う手もあるでしょ。雨どいをよじ登って2階に至ることも不可能とは言い切れません。しかしこれをさせるわけにはいきません。
ほう、させぬとな。ではどうしたというのか。まさか夜通しゲストハウスの周りをぐるぐる回って根津番をしたとでも言うのか。いや、それはできないよな。そなたはラウンジにいたのだから。ラウンジの窓から見える外は外周の一部に過ぎない。
そうです。私は外壁を2階まで登るあらゆる方法を完全に防ぐことはできません。しかし2階へ侵入することを防ぐことはできました。
侵入を防ぐと。
すでに読めている手です。恐ろしい。ここまで必要とは。
Were the windows locked?
ゲストハウスはその構造上、
Yeah,
外部から
I
2階
think
へ
that's
侵
going to be
入
the
するに
case
は
here.
窓を使うほかありません。施錠？どうでもいいことです。ただ窓が、鎧戸が一度も開かれなかったことを保証すればいいだけの話だったんです。
Ah, we're going back to Old Reliable.
私は黄金の隠し場所に立ち会い、ラウンジを通過せずにゲストハウス2階へ至ることのできる全ての方法を断絶する工作を開始しました。同じことです。これまでと何も変わらず。
あんたまさかゲストハウスのすべての窓にお得意の封印をしたって言い出すの？あの天気の中、その格好で。
一応漂着時の水着持ってますので。
イかれてやがるぜ。客人として迎えられた家でそんなことをして回るってのか。
普通の人間なら絶対にありえない不審な行為です。ですが彼女は魔女の駒ですから。
Yeah, I guess she really is a freak. In the middle of all that rain, Erica sealed all the windows from the outside. to create an alibi showing that no one could have snuck into the guest house from the outside. She climbed up the wall herself and did that to all of the windows on the first and second floor. No, to all things that could possibly have permitted entry. Although, after hearing that she'd listened to the cousin room all night long, without even sleeping a wink, this new bizarre action didn't seem quite so impossible. That's what I'm saying. This had probably also looked like a venomous spider. A disgusting spider crawling over the outside guest house wall during a storm. I will say though,
あなたという人は我が後ろ宮家を何だと心得ておられるのですか。客人として迎えた恩も忘れ。
探偵にとって後宮家は事件の舞台以上にも以下にもなりません。私にとって事件発生前に重要なことは登場人物の名前を覚えることと、知きたる事件に備え各種アリバイの取得準備および工作に専念することです。
Okay, by completely getting rid of these possible ways of entering the building, doesn't that also kind of like work in Natsuhi's favor as being a culprit in the first Twilight? Sure, the second one is still going to be a bit of a doozy, but here, it's now completely impossible for her to have actually entered the building. It seems like Erika had everything under control.
事件発生前に何の準備もしない探偵は私から見れば三流かと。逗留先で人が死ぬと私たちは知っているのだから。
そしてエリカは事件発覚と同時に全ての封印が破られていないことを確認したわ。エリカが死体発見時に一番にいとこ部屋に到着しなかった理由はそういうことよ。死体なんて見分しなくても赤き真実でいくらでも確定が取れる。それより重要なのはアリバイ構築のための封印の確認だった。
我が主は完璧です。私は主に命じられたままに全てを完璧に証明しただけです。
見事よエリカ。私の分身、私の駒。どうラムダ。これでラウンジでのエリカの見張りはアリバイ構築上絶対の信頼性を持つことが証明されたと思うけど。
There is no way to reach the second floor without passing through the lounge. Again, that kind of doesn't work for Natsuhi either. We're running out of possibilities that this could have gone down here. I don't think... I still hold on to the fact I don't think it was her. But we're ruining her capabilities here of being able to commit the crime. If you could never enter the building through the second floor, if you couldn't go through the lounge without passing by Erika, who knew of the cousins up until midnight and was in the lounge, or lounge-ish area after midnight, then, you know, what the fuck? You know, like, how is anybody supposed to get into this building?
Erika, あなたの封印は完璧よ。私が赤で認めるわ。ゲストハウス2階へはラウンジを通過しない限り至ることはできず、ラウンジにいたエリカに知られずに至ることは不可能。
ありがとうございます、ラムダデルタ卿。以上により次のことが確定したわけです。以上により犯行時刻は生存確認をした24時からラウンジで団らんが始まった午前1時までの1時間の間に限定される。
So it's this 1 hour here. Midnight and 1 a.m.
すでにお話ししていますが、私は24時にラウンジにおり、そこで南條先生と意気投合し、午前1時まで
Okay, she was in the
ミステリー
library.
談義にふけっておりました。お恥ずかしながらすっかり熱中してしまっていたため、その間廊下を誰かが通り抜けても私は気づけませんでした。
So during that time, anybody could have come in. She was engrossed with her discussion up until 1 a.m. when Rosa came back, and then that's when she went up and told Goda about it, and then they went down and enjoyed a 2-hour party where Nanjo and Goda were hella drinking and Erika was hella chilling.
探偵にあるまじき痛恨のミスです。
After doing all that maneuvering and setting up seals to guarantee a perfect alibi, she became too engrossed in a mystery discussion and left an opening? Her relaxed smile was completely shameless, the total opposite of her words. It almost seems like it's the other way around. It's enough to make you think that this was an intentional trap. To make it clear to all that only Natsuhi didn't have an alibi between midnight and 1 a.m.
つまり逆説的に申し上げるとこういうことです。いとこ部屋に至って犯行を行えるのは24時から午前1時までの間にアリバイを失う人物だけということです。
Her eyes clearly hinted that Natsuhi was the only one who fit this description. I mean, it can't be Goda now. The windows were never open. And it couldn't have been any of the other servants. Or I guess Kumasawa was the only other one. Nanjo was busy in the library. This is getting a little difficult here, isn't it? We're running out. We are running out of possibilities here. It should have been a crime whose time and location were completely unknown during that long night, but because of the alibis that Erika had constructed, it had been limited to the time period between midnight and 1 a.m. Erika left the cousin room at midnight, and that marks the last confirmation that George and the others were left alive. And after the party in the lounge started at 1 a.m., it was impossible to reach the cousin room by any method.
人間のくせになんてやつ。
まずいですな。一夜が1時間にまで封じられ、残す容疑者のコマもこの調子ではあとわずかでしょう。
ベルンカステル共鳴やるではないか。
私バトラと違ってバカじゃないの。
Oh, she's got a point there.
こんなゲーム5度も繰り返せば手の内は十分だわ。
それでは改めまして。
And we will continue in the next one because I am out of time. Loki, I'm actually not even feeling well, but I wanted to grind out a session here, so now it is time for me to be going back to my resting, and now I've got all this to think about, so that'll be fun. That'll add to my nightmarish dreams and whatever else, but no, this was actually a really fun one. I was told that this was going to be a bit of a long chapter here as we begin to, engage in our lovely battles of wits, and, wits are they, goddamn are their wits. It is fun, though. I actually am enjoying the theories that are being brought up, how things could have gone down, and all of them just being dashed, and now we've actually completely closed in on a singular hour that all of this could have occurred. It's very fascinating, and I really dig it. But yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.